Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're doing well. Let's continue our lessons about introduction to language, and we are going to tackle one of the lowest parts of the subject, the power of language. Language doesn't merely describe reality. It actively shapes how we perceive, categorize, and understand the world. Okay, perceive, categorize, and understand the world. Every verb has different perspective. Perceive, which means the way you can receive information. Categorize, which means sorting. Can you sort this to this category? Can you sort that to this category? For example, we can categorize apples to fruit category. We can categorize, for example, pepper to vegetables category, and so on, and understand the world, to comprehend the world. The relationship between language, thought, and culture, thought means idea, has fascinated linguists, philosophers, and psychologists for generations. Linguistics, the people who deal with language, philosophers, the people who have philosophy about life or about some things about life, and psychologists is the people who deal with the psyche, النفس. The spear of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, developed by Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf. This hypothesis proposes that language influences thought and perception. A strong version, linguistic determination or determinism. Language determines thought. People can only think in categories available in their language. As I told you before, we can categorize things to categories or to groups, and then we can put things in these groups. Weak vision or weak version, linguistic reality. Language influences thought by making certain distinctions, which means differences, easier or more natural to perceive. While the strong version has been largely rejected, research supports the weak version. For example, languages with more precise color terminology facilitate faster color discrimination. Languages that mark grammatical gender influence speakers' associations with objects. Language with different spatial references systems, for example, absolute versus relative, affect spatial cognition. Cognition, the way to not think. Metaphors we live by. Metaphors we live by. George Lakoff and Mark Johnson demonstrated how metaphors structure our conceptual systems. We unconsciously use physical experiences to understand abstract concepts. Metaphors aren't just poetic devices, but fundamental cognitive tools. Writing systems. How can we write? How can we use language to write? Writing systems are visible representations of language, allowing communication across time and space. Though speaking is universal to all human cultures, writing is a relatively recent invention, appearing independently in only a few places worldwide around 5000 to 3000 BCE. Today, hundreds of writing systems represent the world's language, falling into several major categories. Let's start with the alphabets, the basic alphabets. Systems where individual symbols, letters, represent individual consonant and vowel sounds. Each letter theoretically represents a single phoneme, though in practice the correspondence is rarely perfect. Latin alphabet, for example, used for English, Spanish, French, and many other languages, originally derived from Greek and ultimately from Phoenician writing. Cyrillic alphabet, used for Russian, Ukrainian, Bulgarian, and other Slavic languages, developed from Greek in the 19th century. Greek alphabet, the first to systematically represent vowels, source of both Latin and Cyrillic scripts. Korean, Hangul, a phonetically precise alphabet designed in 1443 with letters grouped into syllable blocks. Abjads, consonants, base systems where vowels are omitted or deleted or indicated with optional diacritics. The reader must supply appropriate vowels based on context and the knowledge of the language. Arabic scripts used for Arabic, Persian, Urdu, and many other languages written right to left with letters that change from depending on the language. Script used for Hebrew and Yiddish, also written right to left. Phoenician ancient script that was the ancestor of Greek, Latin, Arabic, and Hebrew writing systems. Syllabaries, systems where each symbol represents a syllable, typically a consonant plus vowel combination. Japanese kana, hiragana, and katakana, two parallel syllabaries used alongside Chinese characters in Japanese writing. Cherokee syllabary, invented by Squash in the 1820s to write the Cherokee language. Liner B, ancient script used to write Mycenaean Greek around 1450 to 1200 BCE. Logographic systems, systems where each symbol represents a word or morpheme, meaningful unit rather than a sound. Chinese characters used for Chinese language and adapted for Japanese kanji and historically for Korean and Vietnamese contains thousands of characters. Egyptian hieroglyphs, ancient system combining logographic and phonetic. Cuneiform, one of the earliest writing systems, originally pictographic but evolved to include phonetic elements. Most modern writing systems are not pure examples of these categories, but combines elements of multiple types. For example, Japanese combines Chinese derived logograms kanji with two syllabaries, hiragana and katakana, and occasionally Roman letters, romaji. Even alphabetic systems like English retain some graphic elements such as a nom, a, ra, s2, and symbols $sign, at, and ant. Perspective versus descriptive grammar. Grammar discussions often involve two fundamentally different approaches to language: perspective and descriptive. These approaches reflect different goals, methods, and attitudes toward language variations and change. If you're talking about prescriptive grammar, focuses on how language should be used accordingly to established norms, establishes rules for correct usage, often based on formal written standards, judges some forms as right and others as wrong, resists language change as corruption or decay. Historically associated with elite social groups. Descriptive grammar focuses on how language is actually used by native speakers, observes and documents patterns without judgment, recognizes variations as natural and systematic, views all native speakers' varieties as valid, sees language change as inevitable and interesting, aims for scientific objectivity. Prescriptive versus descriptive grammar, the tension between approaches. These different approaches often lead to disagreements about language rules like ending sentences with prepositions or split infinitives to boldly go. Language in literature and media. Language is the raw material of literature, advertising, journalism, and virtually all media. Understanding how language works allows us to analyze how writers and communicators craft their messages for maximum impact. Literary language. Literature often exploits language's creative potential, sound patterns, alliteration, assonance, rhyme, and rhythm. Figurative language, metaphor, simile, personification. Narrative voice, first person, third person, unreliable narrators. Dialogue, character development through speech patterns. World building, creating fictional realities through language. All the world stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. William Shakespeare's As You Like It, one of the most famous plays in the world. This famous passage uses the extended metaphor of life as theater, with people as actors playing roles. The language creates a conceptual framework that shapes our understanding of human experience. The language of advertising. The advertisers deploy linguistic techniques strategically. Memorable slogan. Memorable slogans. Just do it. For Nike, think different. For Apple, imperative mood. Direct commands to consumers. Course objectives. By the end of the language course, you will be able to develop analytical skills, apply linguistic concepts to analyze texts across genres and contexts, identify patterns in language structure and use form, sound systems to discourse features. Goals and expectations for this course: apply linguistic knowledge, connect theoretical concepts to real-world language practice, use linguistic frameworks to analyze communicative situations in daily life. Summary looking ahead. We've explored in this introduction language study encompasses a rich variety of approaches and topics, from the physical production of sounds to the social meanings of different language varieties. The field connects to virtually every area of human knowledge and experience, offering insights into cognition, culture, and communication. Key takeaways: language is systematic. Despite its apparent complexity and variation, human language follows systematic patterns at multiple levels: phonological, morphological, syntactic, and semantic. These patterns can be observed, described, and analyzed using linguistic methods. Language is social. Language exists primarily for communication between people. Its forms and functions are shaped by social needs, cultural texts, and count interpersonal relationships. Understanding language requires examining its use in social settings. Language is dynamic. Languages constantly evolve in response to changing societies, technologies, and communicative needs. This natural process of change reflects the creativity and adaptability of human language rather than decay or corruption. Tips for success: develop an observational habit, pay attention to language around accents, word choices, conversation patterns. The world becomes a linguistics laboratory. Practice analytical thinking, move beyond correct versus incorrect to ask why language works the way it does in different contexts. Concept Connect concepts. Language isn't compartmentalized. Phonology affects morphology, syntax influences semantics, and all levels interact. Thank you so much for watching me teaching with this language. And on the last video, we are going to summarize all subject and it's gonna come to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much. See you next lecture, inshallah, the last lecture in Introduction to Language subject.